Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we continue the subtopic on of discussion on chapter 4 on human behaviors and the laws of learning. Today we talk about the subtopic of behavior modification. I'll read some paragraph from the book. This was in conjunction with Professor Muhammad Mahdi Jenkins' idea of how psychology can be used for goodly purpose. Also, psychology can be abused and used for evil purpose, especially the powerful aspect of conditioning and aspect of loss of learning. If you apply it wrongly, it will be used in a very oppressive and very difficult situation by a lot of the despotic regime, which are using actually psychology, conditioning and reinforcement, usually punishment and so on, to actually change behavior. So there are the good aspect of psychology, the bad aspects of psychology, which you must take cognizance and then realize that as Muslims we should use what is good, hasanah, to develop a wonderful worldview for all humanity. Stop abusing whatever knowledge that you have, because like we have all the knowledge that we have in this world, we can use it for goodly purpose or evil purpose. For example, we have our even a simple impediment for our knife. If we have a knife, we can use it to cut fruits, or we can use it to kill a person. So the same thing with this whole knowledge of operant conditioning, loss of learning, and how it can affect human behavior. So I read human behavior modification. This early attempt to apply the laws of learning with human beings are called behavior modification. I think some of the resistance to the application of the learning principles occurred because of that unappealing and misleading label. So the word behavior modification, as I say, is just a very neutral statement. That means we use behavior modification in cognitive behavior therapy, for example. We use behavior modification technique in positive Islamic cognitive behavior therapy, PICBT. We use behavior modification when we are teaching a children who has temper tantrum. Those are good approaches towards achieving a better, more coherent, normal life for all those people who have psychological problems, whether they are having anxiety problem, depression, bipolar, whatever, you name it, the whole spectrum of psychological problems that everybody from the day they are born until the day they die will have to face, including grief, suicidal tendencies, and so many addiction to videos, addiction to pornography. Addiction alone, there's a whole spectrum of change that is needed in behavior modification. So the whole idea is the word behavior modification is okay as long as it's used towards healing, it's used towards improving one's life or our client or those who have those problems. Behavior modification somehow sounds like something that might be done to people against their will, which is also true. This is the negative aspect. Unfortunately, there are instances where the laws of learning being applied to alter people's behavior against their will. One of the worst abuses of operant conditioning occurred when prisoners of war were brainwashed by using these learning principles. Okay, so this is where we see that prisoners of wars are used by despotic regime, even secret services throughout the world. All right, rendition and so on, where they brainwash these prisoners of war to submit to them and then take a videotape of their submission, whether it occurs in the Korean War, it occurs in the Vietnam War, it occurs in today in rendition and so on. So there is a lot of evil where professional psychologists who are trained in this idea of brainwashing is using this whole concept of trying to change a worldview of a person. And as I say, if it is applied to make something good, it is okay, but it's applied to create evil. For example, during the Nazi regime, all right, they have this whole expert that use this propaganda machine to create this mania of hatred and then from there it grew into this Nazi organization, then it grew into their military power, it grew into the Second World War. All right, the same thing with the Japanese nationalistic, and now we have the same thing of using operant conditioning and loss of learning. They are using the extreme right wing, for example, in Europe. They are trying to get rid of all refugees. They are coming because of war or turmoil or starvation or poverty in their country to Europe. What they do, they become this extreme right wing using exactly the whole framework of conditioning and loss of learning. So they form parties, create a fear, a phobia of refugees or migrants, and then they come into power. And this is already happening in Poland, happening in Hungary, already is happening in Austria, and even later many countries. So this is where the loss of learning is so powerful. It can be used as a mechanism towards enriching human society to become peaceful in the 21st century. For example, that's our wish and our desire to have an Islamic psychology that brings about peace, happiness, justice for all humanity, a good way of life, using these whole laws of learning. Yes, we can use that, but to abuse it, to create hatred, to abuse it, to create war, to create murder or genocide, which is happening especially in Myanmar. And those who are carrying this genocide are using Buddhism. Buddhism is a very, very peaceful religion. But these extremist monks are spearheading the genocide of hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims in Arakan state. And you see how evil it can be. But they know the method, and that method is brainwashing of the people of Buddhist descent in Myanmar to be afraid or to be fearful of Muslims because, oh, this Muslim is going to conquer you and then they're going to kill you. So before they kill you, you kill them. And that kind of ideology of evil, that is also prevalent, as I say, in the Muslim world, where we have this Daesh, IS or Boko Haram or Al-Shabaab, which are exactly reflecting this whole thing, using the beautiful deen of Islam for their own evil purpose. So we must understand that when we understand psychology, the whole range of using conditioning and the loss of learning can be so widespread that we have to use it in a proper manner to bring about a wonderful world of the future of peace, of happiness, of success, and fulfilling our role. Right? Again, to understand these basic principles of Islam, that we are the custodian on this earth, we are the Caliph of Allah on this earth. It is our role to make ourselves good, to live in peace and harmony with everybody, with nature, which Allah has ordained upon, the birds, the bees, the trees, the bacteria. Everybody must have a space to live in peace and harmony, to live in justice, to live in love and care and share. So many of those wonderful things that we can recreate a beautiful world on this earth. That is our role as Muslims, to make ourselves good, to help others to be good, and making the world good. So whatever the evil that is happening, using psychology for behavior modification, let it be for the betterment of human civilization, but not to use it for brainwashing, for evil, for hatred, for genocide, and all those evils that you see in the world today. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they guide us and make this beautiful deen so beautiful that inshallah all of humanity will see that we are having a good balanced psychology in the way of as we are trying to do this da'wah, that is positive Islamic psychology, a transcendent model to achieve peace, happiness and success in the 21st century, inshallah.